how can I not adopt tools, but how can I adopt these agentic workforce to actually support my business needs and my needs personally? How can I replicate myself and make myself more effective? How can I replicate someone in my team who's really good at that thing, plug all of their knowledge into an agentic workforce and amplify that?
Hi everyone, I'm Michael, founder of Empath, and excited to have another really great topic today. Today with one of the leading CROs for a really amazing payments company, where this CRO has actually gone into go-to-market in a very different way than some of the others actually have today. We're going to hear a story about what it means to hire in the world of AI, how to use AI, and a whole bunch of other things to consider from that kind of a lens. So without further ado, Nick, over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Michael. Yep, so my name's Nick Dunse, and I work for a company called Shuttle. And Shuttle, we call ourselves a payment layer, and we provide that payment layer to typically other software vendors who need to get all of the goodies and features from the world of payments and provide that to their customer base. We also sell to enterprise merchants, as we call them, or enterprise clients who typically operate like a software vendor themselves, and they get all of the same benefit from working with us, with our systems and our expertise.
Payment space in general has been quite a unique one. I think over the past decade, there's been so many different versions of go-to-market. There's also been very different offerings in payment, some about consolidating, some about specializing. You're much more of an expert in that world than I am. But I think one thing that really interested me, and exactly why I was really excited to have you join this episode today, is because you're doing kind of the whole go-to-market space and how you scale quite differently than any other, CRO or VP of sales or anyone else that I've met is actually doing at your level. So to give anyone listening in or watching in right now a bit of context, you've gone really into how to hire better as opposed to the old playbook, which is just hire significantly and as many people as you think you need without really having that purpose, right? So I'd love today to start off by kind of going into what you've done there and anything you might want to share to some people that are listening in.
It's interesting times, isn't it, from that? We came from a world, especially in SaaS or the fintech world, where effectively the growth at any cost situation, which basically looked like bums on seats, and do as much as you can. I suppose the framing of what I've tried to do is replicate myself, and hopefully myself is something worth replicating. And you do that with humans as well as an agentic workforce. Fortunately, I started my career in product, making things in small businesses that got acquired, and then moved into marketing and then sales. So I've had a full exposure to all different disciplines, which has kind of given me the ability to make what I've made and kind of envision what I've made. I'm getting older now, so I've kind of can lean on that experience. But the idea is to replicate quality and do things well, and be efficient with that, and of course be effective, as opposed to just make it look like you've got quality and quantity.
I can imagine. And I think it's actually something you pointed out quite nicely. You very rarely find people that have come from the product side and crossed over into commercial side. Someone like myself has been really only in the kind of commercial side. I've been very lucky with one of the first fintechs I was with to be very product heavy in terms of how we sold. So we had to understand it intrinsically. But I really support your topic around being able to understand kind of the full lens of a business from that point of view. So when it comes to a little bit more around that, right? When you're thinking of hiring people or potentially scaling your team now going forward, what are some of the maybe roles that you might want to keep, in place? Because obviously in payments, there's many different hiring strategies, right? There's some that want domain expertise. There's some that want technology expertise, plugged in expertise. So in your world, right, what is it that you kind of look for? And then maybe what are some of the areas that you're starting to or have begun not using a person to fulfill and maybe using AI or something else like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think humans are great when you are needing to have conversations with other humans. And so with those kinds of positions where you're managing certain kinds of relationships, either suppliers or clients, you really need to make sure that you do have boots on the ground and people to do that. And hopefully you can invest in those areas and not have to overinvest in other areas that can be automated, or you can have an agentic workforce do a lot of that grind and deploy the cash that you might have put over there in somewhere else. The other thing I'd say, of course, is, and so to think about that again, and that comes down to a quality consideration there as well. The other thing to think about in terms of this deployment of people is, with an agentic workforce today, it's not entirely autonomous. And I don't think, well, we hope it never will be in the most extreme way, but you need humans to actually manage an agentic workforce. Today, you need more humans than you will tomorrow. But ultimately, the humans that are in place managing this workforce of agents, they may have been a developer yesterday, they may have been a salesperson yesterday, but ultimately now they're a manager of an agentic workforce. And what does that mean? What does that look like? How do you do that? As opposed to, you might have been managing people before, you might not have been managing anyone, but you're certainly not having to do the detail that you necessarily had to do before. You just got to put on your management hat and upskill.
That's interesting, Nick, because you've actually kind of preluded some of the next topic I was going to come on to, but it actually is around, in the world of agentic workforce, in the world of agentic commercial teams, and even if you have a hybrid of some humans, some agents, right? What actually is the role of a CRO going forward? I mean, one of the things that stood out to me when we first connected, right, was that you did come from product. So you have a product lens as a revenue commercial leader. Other, commercial leaders might take more of like a relationship or have a different kind of a background, right? So would you say it's almost, is it fair that the future CRO needs to have a bit of a product-like mentality? Or would you see maybe other elements that have to come in to that world going into the world of agentic?
Let's phrase it like this. I think if you're a sales leader, a marketing leader, anyone on the commercial side, or even a CRO, if you're not involved in product, historically, I don't know that you would have performed as well as you could. And so no one wants a commercial person clogging up their product roadmap with their inputs necessarily. But you've got, you should always have been thinking about, how can I be as close to the customers and as close to the product as possible? The thing is, that's always been true. However, now it's not just about observability and communication. It's actually about, do I have some skills to add value into this workforce that I'm trying to build? Can I actually adopt some of those things I can learn from some of the product people that I might have come across in my team or elsewhere to architect a workforce, to think about things a little bit more logically? I'll give you a funny little story to help with this sort of analogy as well. And I've mentioned this to others before, but I'm in a group with some people who are all in go-to-market. And a guy I know is running a large team. And he was really excited when he could actually go and start using some of this tool set. So Claude Code, for example. And he wrote into the group, guys, check this out. I've just been able to extract a load of data out of my CRM and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And I just wrote back and I said, that's awesome. But why do you want it in a spreadsheet? Why do you want it in an Excel spreadsheet? Like, that's kind of like putting, a combustion engine in a Tesla or something. And he sort of said, well, because that's where I want to process the data. That's how I look at the data. That's my existing process. And I said, well, why don't you just tell the AI to create you a dashboard on your computer or online and give you the insights, give you the graphs, and then you don't have to process the data. You've already got the report that you needed to make anyway. And so, you can, it's easy if you're not coming from a product architect type background, to think in the broadest possible way, what is it that I'm actually trying to achieve? What's my end game? And how can I stitch together these different things to achieve that? So yeah, that's a long answer to your question about thinking about how to manage a workforce, whether it's humans or agents. But there is a stepping back that needs to happen.
And it could even be about managing yourself and your expectations, because that's actually a really interesting example, right? And I think most of the companies I come across that are beginning to use AI in their commercial or go-to-market side, it still is in, help me create this email. Help me just rewrite this for me. Look at this, create this circle dashboard. Like, these things are very similar to you. So it's nice to see some adoption, I think, for sure. But I think it's definitely more to be done in that world, which is another area I'd love to go into with you, because on my side, right, a lot of the go-to-market work that I do with businesses is help them become more scalable, right? And pre this year, a lot of the time it was help us build a scalable commercial engine, but that usually meant here's a RevOps person, here's a team of people to do the sales, here's like a marketing person and how that all looks, and here's the whole playbook effectively. And now this year, I'm finding that we're almost 60 to 70% of the requests I'm getting is actually, right, good strategy, but I want you to do this all with AI and so on and so forth. So we can, but the problem is the people we're working with have still not quite understood the limitations and the potential possibilities of working with AI. And so a lot of times I'll work with a client and say, we've built this great go-to-market engine. It's ready to fire off emails, for example, automatically with all the things, but they're still hesitant to let that be happening, or they're afraid of this. So I guess my kind of story here is to lead into a question around, how would you, if you had advice for other CROs or people kind of in your seat right now that are beginning that journey to get more adopted with it, what can they do? What steps can they take? How would you maybe advise, that example you just gave, to maybe go a step further and adopt more of it?
I think it comes back to just sitting down for a moment and thinking, what is it that you want to achieve? Where do you want to spend your time? Where can you add value? What can be automated, do you think? And once you have that, get out a piece of paper. Like, this is where your piece of paper and pen still comes in useful, and start thinking at a higher level. And the answer to this question is slightly different for everyone, because everyone has slightly different skills and interests. Ideally, I actually really like writing, but in many cases, I don't really want to have to write another email ever again. So I like to, in my outbound process, I've ensured that the messaging is how I want it built. And so I'm throwing as much of my own wisdom, IP, and character into that process. Obviously, aligned with the market and and what we offer. But I think the first step is just to really think about, well, what can I do? What can I let go of? What should be automated? Can I do more than just have a few tools and tasks working? Can I actually stitch together systems? It's only until very recently that we've had AI that is beyond a browser, that is actually connecting workflows and systems. And so now we've got processes that can run potentially without our input, or at least do a lot of the work and then ask for feedback.
That's nice, because I think the future company in any industry, right, needs to have somewhat, if not all, of these processes somewhat automated, because you will lose to competitors that are just gaining better insights and the ability to act faster than others, right? So I think it's great that you've done that. And it's actually also a good kind of segue into, the lead topic and demand generation and all these things, right? So I think the team side makes a lot of sense, really, really good insights. Demand generation, pipeline creation, finding opportunities. One, in payments in general, right? Payments have always been, at least from my lens, has always been a little bit difficult with lead generation, right? So there's lots of different potential verticals, industries. There's different types of buyers, personas. There's so many things in payments that are very different than just simply selling like a widget based, right? So before today, that was difficult already. But now moving forward, right? How do you see the demand generation of a payments company, maybe even, Shuttle in itself, if you'd like to share, is doing demand generation a little bit differently using these tools?
Yeah, and just to clarify, when you're talking about demand generation, you're talking about effectively content generation, right? So you've got a magnet, so you've got a gate that people come through or a door that people knock on. And we saw over the last few years, demand generation really come to the forefront of the tactics around go-to-market and marketing, right? And there's so much noise, and also people were on these channels that it was a way to capture an audience and engage an audience, and that is still relevant without a doubt. However, the danger is now with AI, of course, is that we've got even more noise than ever. We've got more. I mean, I was on YouTube the other day watching something, and a video popped up and because I'm making this kind of content, I know it exactly when I see it. But the lip sync avatar actually ended up having two different accents, like an American accent and an Australian accent. And it just completely, like whatever they were selling, it just completely discredited whatever it was that they were selling. It might have been the best thing for me. But all I could focus on was that it was just weird. And it might have been really well targeted to me, but I have no idea. So I think that you can make stuff really easily now, and you can put it in channels really easily, and you can target pretty easily. And it's as you mentioned, B2B is hard, but you can get this stuff out the door. Does it actually do the job of generating demand? is actually the question that you need to continually go back and say, does it do that? Are we getting a return on investment from that? What AI can give you is it can both give you the insights on what you should create and who you should create it for. So you can refine that ICP, refine that messaging. You can create videos and content much faster and iterate them. You could throw out shorts on YouTube that are quality if you've got a good process, and you can see how they land. You can see which segments respond. I actually created a load of different videos across different segments, and it was really surprising which video was responded to the most. And I can just take that experiment, and then I can put the results of that and the insights of that into something else, and maybe feed that back to product and kind of our go-to-market. And so that's what you can do. And it can and it will replace demand generation for a lot of execution. I don't know if we'll ever have like two avatars in a podcast talking to each other. I don't know. Will people watch that? I'm not sure. But it certainly helped me prepare for this, right? And ultimately, this is some kind of demand generation now.
I think it's good that you mentioned this. I'll tell you a really funny personal story, right? So it actually was more past demand gen, but actually I was asked once recently when I was given an introduction to a CEO to potentially help their business with something. Before I could speak to them, I had to pitch my 30-minute intro pitch to their bot, and the bot would rank what I offered compared to what they need, and if it met the criteria, that would be the case. So gatekeeping, I think, is interesting, but I think what you're surfacing right now is even more relevant, right? Because I see there's two kinds of things emerging, and one is either using this to build more personalized or a bit more real content, ironically, because video format, I agree with you, is the complete future of how to get content out there, but get people to believe in you, listen to your message. Long form writing content is just everyone's doing it using AI now, so it loses its intentional and purpose, like you said. So I support that fully. And I think the others that are using it is actually more to just mass produce stuff that's just trying to appeal to many. So if you're in that former kind of a bucket, and particularly if you're in a B2B fintech world, that is kind of, I think, how you would drown out the noise. I have a belief and a theory based on the different businesses I'm seeing recently, is that whenever you go out to prospect, right? So the old model used to be you send 3 emails, maybe one of those emails someone will connect you to, or maybe you'll happen to meet someone at a trade fair or something and that will kind of pick it up, right? Now we can have more intent-based outreach. So now you can, really time that email when you have the right moment to reach out to them, right? But to capture the interest of somebody and to get someone to really believe in what you're saying, anything authentic is something I think that's going to be demanding more of that in this market. And I think video content, like you mentioned, is actually a really good example of how you can create an authentic word, but maybe using tools to help it guide you and advise you on creating that message if you need to, as an example. So yeah, that's more the kind of angle I would say from that point of view.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think there are so many channels that we can communicate with people on. I think it's ultimately about layering those communications and using the right channel with the right medium as well. It's not to say that a text email or a text message can't work. Absolutely, I get responses from those. You want to sort of encircle that person with a lot of other trustworthiness, and video is a great way to do that, as you say, so that they're more likely to respond to whatever it is that you send them at the right time. There is a contradiction which has happened with video, actually. If said so many SDRs who were sending videos to you on LinkedIn with like your name on a board, right? And that kind of definitely puts you off now, because it's just a trick, it's just a tool, and it's so easy to have AI or a solution replicate that out. It is ultimately standing on that idea of authenticity, though.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I got one of those actually 2 weeks ago, and it was extremely annoying. So you called that out. But really great. So one more kind of question topic on this particular topic before we move on to our last one is actually around more on the intent signals and how you identify when to reach out to certain people. Because I know you've done a lot of great work in building this kind of go-to-market engine that you have, right? Really, nowadays, what are some of the signals that you would, in the payment space maybe particularly, or even in the context of Shuttle, would you look for to try and begin a conversation with a potential prospect to look after shaping up a conversation with someone? Anything there that maybe would be relevant for others listening in?
Yeah, signals is a topic that is quite hot at the moment in terms of using signals effectively to make sure that your timing is good. And quite frankly, in sales, timing is everything. As long as you've got a reasonable message and a reasonable offer, timing is probably the key thing. And you can make an enterprise deal move in weeks versus years with timing. It's quite difficult to get beyond those age-old traditional signals of fundraise, new job, go into a new market. Those ones are really strong because something new just triggers people to think about other solutions or other ways to do things. Or they've got a need to meet and they've got the funding to do it. So those kind of signals are key. And there's lots of places that you can get those signals. You don't actually need to subscribe to something expensive to do that. You can I sign up to industry newsletters. And what I do is I get my AI bot to go through my emails and pull out all the data from those newsletters that I receive on a daily cadence, actually. And then it will run through one of my outbound skills, and it will go and recommend fit. So it'll run a process that's autonomous, and it will come back and say, hey, I found this company that is just done a Series A, or they're going into a new market, or they were just acquired, and they are actually a really good fit, and they're not in your CRM, or maybe they are, but we haven't spoken to them for ages. And that works. In terms of giving me a reason to do it, and hopefully the timing works. There are lots of other signals that are coming out in terms of having better data on who's actually visiting your site or commenting on your posts on LinkedIn and things like that. Sometimes it still feels a little bit lucky with some of those signals, as opposed to the other signals, the primary signals that I mentioned kind of really do dictate timing. But what you want to do is you want to layer all of that knowledge into a message. And whether that's a video message or it's a text message, you want to take that relevance and put it into an authentic message. And that is ultimately what's going to land better than, hey, Michael, I saw you got a new job. Can I sell you this thing? Like, why? I don't get it. But you can create some creative messaging, whether that's video or text, if you've got that insight.
Yeah, that's really insightful. It's about basically now you have an opportunity to, in that message, give actually something of value and give people more of like a comfort. Because if you are, just joining your job, you're under a ton of pressure to turn things around quickly. If you get an email like that saying, hey, I saw this is happening. I also saw that this company is potentially struggling or maybe expanding. I can alleviate all that pressure by just these 3 things. Let's have a conversation. You really don't become invasive, you become helpful. And I think that's a really great example. And the more that people can use, like you said, these day-old signals, year-old signals, I think that's something for sure. I think then for the last kind of topic, and I mean, this is now moving into what you've actually built, right? So I think this is kind of the big thing I've been personally curious and interested in, right? Is you have built a lot on this front, right? And you talked a lot about what you're doing, how to talk about managing teams, what the future role looks like for any CRO. But in, yourself, in your business, what have you actually built? And what would you like to maybe share with people that might be listening in too?
Yeah, I think actually if I do share an overview of what I've built, that's going to be most helpful for people. Before I do that, I would say there's certain functions that you can pretty much wholly automate now. So if you look at functions where you're thinking about what's been called revenue operations or even pricing, or thinking about those more statistical or data crunching functions, actually AI is really good at that. And you just want it to present you with insights based on your data. Obviously, you have to get the data in, but you don't need to employ an analyst. You don't need to have a 5-person RevOps team in a large company now. You can get rid of most of that and use people more effectively. So there's certain things that you can do. Let me just share the overview, and then that's probably most helpful for everyone.
Yeah, that would be great. And while you do that, I'll just second that as well, because I think pricing in general is a really good topic you've brought up, and we probably don't even have time to go into all that today. But I think pricing, how you price, how you leverage the data to be able to price is completely changing. I mean, there's a few agencies that I've been following that help people price particularly, and things like seat-based pricing is kind of going out the window, and things like this is happening as well. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting part. And RevOps, I could see that being replaced a lot more with the term go-to-market engineering, because there is no need to build dashboards anymore, right? You can have an engineer build anything go-to-market for you. So great sites. Amazing. So here we go. The exciting insights.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a few things here. And I've put in dummy data for certain things where it might be slightly sensitive, but I'm definitely not going to go anything near sensitive information. But the overview is this, right? So I've effectively got upwards of 80 agents working under the different disciplines in the team, covering everything from marketing, sales, a bit of customer success. We're a little bit different in terms of how we do our service and success. And then kind of looking at our revenue and our pricing and kind of those RevOps things. But I've tried to cover that off here. So let me come down to the actual org chart. So let's kind of think about this in our org chart world. And this is what we've got. We've got effectively demand gen or marketing here in terms of content production. We've got our outbound sales. We've got our SEO and website agents. And SEO is obviously an awesome channel for attracting people organically to your product, to your website, etc. But you can do so much work with SEO now. You have to actually build the engine with some SEO knowledge, but you can do so much of that work, and again, run tests, etc., etc. So effectively, I've got these different disciplines, and I've built out an agent workforce to deliver under each one of these disciplines, whether that's content from videos to blogs to daily LinkedIn content. And a lot of work has got into it, but effectively, you can run a really effective team with humans in the loop who understand what the goal looks like, understand what good looks like, and run this. And then I've got some things that I still want to build. What else can I show you here? Which we will build as well. If I jump across here and I'll give you an example of my playground, something that is so simple for a sales leader to imagine, but has actually been so difficult to create over the years, is effectively who on earth are all of my targets, and where are they in terms of our go-to-market or our pipeline or our deal flow or whatever? How do I actually map that? How do I know how we're performing against that? How can I, if my investor says, who are your top 50 prospects? How can I actually give them an answer with some real data? So that was one of the first things that I went and built. And this is pretend data here, but I break everything down into segments. And the way I'm able to approach go-to-market now is I can say, I'm going to outbound to this particular segment. These are all of the prospects that I can find that are a match in the market. I'm going to score them. I'm going to add custom data points about them so I can do my outbound more effectively. But at the same time, I'm actually going to run some marketing and some demand gen around this. And whereas before you might have needed to coordinate between large departments and numbers of teams to actually bring this about in a coordinated way. And most people don't, right? It's only really the big guys, especially in the consumer space, that do coordinated campaigns across sales and marketing. But it's actually possible now. And then you can see, hey, this is how much of this vertical I'm covering or the segment I'm covering. And this is how I'm scoring them. And this really simple view is something that most people even don't have, in any organization. And then I've got things going on across here, like one of our products is a voice product. Again, dummy data here, but I might say, oh, this person here, Ali Marsh, they signed up for the product, but they have never been engaged. Who knows why they weren't engaged? But let's go and this is plugged into our sequencer, our email and messaging engine. So let me pick a sequence here, and I'm going to go. They've gone dark. Oh, let me go and enroll them in that sequence. So I just built this. This is just a customer success tool that I've built for people who are activated, but might not be sort of live or a true customer yet, I suppose. So it's all of these kinds of things that I've just gone and built to give me the kind of, like, I'm in the watchtower. What's going on? What do I need to do? Where do I need to act? How are we performing? Those kinds of things.
It's incredible to see, first of all, you've got the number 80 there, right? So you think about now having 80 agents, if I got that correct, plus some of the commercial team members that you have, or if not all of them, that infinitely expands who you can focus on. Because one of the things that I always advise startups or scale-ups to focus on is just one key ICP. And it always is difficult when it comes to payments or anyone in fintech, because there's so many potential verticals and solutions and things you can go into. But the challenge has always been the cost of acquisition is so high because you have to have a dedicated team for each ICP or understand each ICP. So you have to have 5 variations of messaging, 5 variations of posting, everything you've just shown. But what you've now done is solve that problem, because now you've built something that allows you to have a focus on multiple ICPs, but the point at which you focus on each individual prospect is now intent-based and not category-based. And so this is something that I think is incredible. And the second thing is you built this, right? So this is another example of how the future role in your similar roles to yourself, right? People having to either build or work within these kinds of frameworks will probably help. Well, I think overall, Nick, that's really incredible to see that, actually. And it's nice to kind of bring it all to life. We've got just maybe 2 minutes more, and I'd love to ask the general kind of open question, right? What is the future going to look like potentially for anyone that now has maybe adopted what you've got in place or is in the payment space, or any kind of words of wisdom that you might want to leave listeners with?
I think that it's already, the future is already here. It's already begun. And my kind of encouragement to people is to figure out how to adopt it so that you have not got an operating loss of 50 million or whatever that might be, but actually you can be more efficient and effective with the resources that you've got. Second, I think that we are now well beyond the kind of spray and pray situation in terms of especially the B2B go-to-market hopes, where there's so much opportunity to create relevant, timely messages for people, and do it well, and do it in a kind of holistic but coordinated way across the different functions. And as I was saying earlier, you can layer these messages to your prospects. So that's really key. I think as a final sort of encouragement and thing to think about is to actually go back to what I said at the start and take a step back and think, how can I not adopt tools, but how can I adopt these agentic workforce to actually support my business needs and my needs personally? Like, how can I do that? How can I replicate myself and make myself more effective? How can I replicate someone in my team who's really good at that thing, plug all of their knowledge into an agentic workforce and amplify that? Because ultimately that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to amplify the stuff that works, the stuff that's good. But you need to think about it first.
That's amazing. I guess it means that, anyone getting fundraising right now, the first thing should be which, agents can I actually deploy, and then maybe look at the commercial team around that. Debatable. But overall, Nick, personally for me, thank you so much. I think you've got one of the most amazing go-to-market engines I've seen. Really great insights today. So thank you so much. And everyone listening in, thank you very much for listening. A few more of these will be coming out over the next 2 weeks. Take care.
Thanks, Michael.